White coats mean trust. Doctors bring healing, hope, and safety. But what if I told you that behind one of those coats hides someone who enjoys pain? Someone who studies fear in his patient's eyes, who carefully measures how much suffering he can inflict before life fades away? Today, Dr. Harry Clare is a respected surgeon, but his story didn't start in a hospital. It started in blood, in terror, in the desperate screams of those who never saw him coming. From the moment Harry could think for himself, the world seemed boring. He didn't care about his rich parents, expensive gifts, or the fake smiles of high society. The only thing that caught his interest? Pain. At 7, he started experimenting with small animals. He didn't just want to see them die, he wanted to understand how they worked. He'd cut open frogs while they were still alive, watching their tiny hearts beat as he sliced deeper. His nanny, Mrs. Ellen, saw something was off. "That boy ain't right," she told his mother. She was fired the next day. The St. Clairs wouldn't tolerate anyone calling their son different. That's when Harry learned his first big lesson. If he wanted to play his games, he had to hide. At 13, Harry took his games to the next level. His classmate, Daniel, was quiet and easy to manipulate. One day, Daniel disappeared. The cops thought he ran away. The truth? Harry lured him to an abandoned warehouse, tied him up, and took his time. He didn't kill Daniel right away. He experimented. He watched how skin tore in different ways, how flesh reacted to fire, how blood cooled when life faded. When he was done, he chopped up the body, scattered the remains in the woods, and walked away like nothing happened. Nobody ever found out. And Harry? He tasted human blood for the first time, and he liked it. As he got older, Harry perfected his mask. He became the perfect neighbor, the kind-hearted son, the guy you could count on. And then he started his next game, compassion. Whenever someone in town suffered a loss, Harry was there. When Mrs. Holloway died in an accident, he comforted her grieving son. When the Thompsons' kid died in a mysterious fire, Harry was the first to offer a helping hand. People called him a good soul. But what they didn't know, every single tragedy had one thing in common: him. He loved watching people break. He fed off their sorrow. Every tear, every moment of despair, he stored them like trophies in his mind. When Harry got into med school, he knew he'd found his true calling. The scalpel wasn't just a toy anymore, it was his tool. But cold cadavers in anatomy class weren't enough. He needed real flesh, real reactions. So he found new patients. The homeless, the forgotten, the ones no one would miss. He'd lure them in with food and kindness, then take them to his private clinic. An abandoned basement, soundproofed and hidden. There, he perfected his craft. He learned how to control pain, how to keep people alive while he worked on them. Harry wasn't just studying medicine, he was playing God. For Harry, no piece of art was complete without a grand finale. His parents were his final project. That night, the St. Clairs sat down for dinner as usual. The wine was laced with just enough poison to weaken them, but not kill them. When his mother's vision blurred, Harry held her close. "You always wondered what went on in my mind, Mom. Tonight you'll find out." His father tried to stand, but the poison had already taken hold. Harry dragged them to the dining room and began his surgery. He sliced them open with precision, keeping them conscious for as long as possible. He wanted them to feel everything. By the time the cops arrived, the mansion was a horror show. The bodies of Mr. and Mrs. St. Clair were spread out on the dinner table, their insides arranged like a grotesque banquet. And at the head of the table, drinking a glass of wine and smiling, sat Harry. The cops had no solid evidence. The St. Clair family name held power. The case remained unsolved. And Harry? He graduated med school, became a top surgeon, and opened his own clinic. But his hunger never faded. Now he had legal access to bodies every day. Patients trusted him. They laid on his table, vulnerable, thinking he was there to help them. Sometimes the scalpel slipped a little too deep. Sometimes patients didn't wake up, and nobody suspected the charming doctor. Harry had mastered his craft. His clinic wasn't just a place for healing, it was his playground. Of course, he had to be careful. No need to draw suspicion. So he started small, subtle mistakes. A patient comes in for a routine procedure. Their recovery is oddly slow. They feel pain in places they shouldn't. Sometimes Harry removed things that weren't supposed to be removed. Sometimes he left souvenirs, tiny metal pieces, hidden stitches in places no one would check. It was hilarious how no one ever noticed. Detective Michael Graves had a gut feeling. People were disappearing. Homeless, drifters, even a few locals. No connection, no evidence. But Graves knew something was off. His investigation led him straight to Dr. Harry Street Clare. On the surface, Harry was spotless. No complaints. Glowing reviews. Beloved by his patients. But Graves kept digging, and Harry didn't like that. One night, Graves got an anonymous tip, an address, a promise of proof. He went alone. He never came back. When they found his body, it was art. His organs were removed with surgical precision, his rib cage cracked open like an experiment. The report called it a cartel hit. Case closed. Harry smirked as he read the news. And he kept on playing. You wake up on an operating table. You can't move. A voice, calm, professional. Try to relax. This will only hurt for a moment. The scalpel glints. And the last thing you see is Harry Clare smiling.